Dear all, we live on a beautiful but fragile planet. I had the pleasure to be in space for 7 months in 2004 and 2012. I lived and worked on board of the International Space Station. And of course I also had the beautiful view on our planet. It's fantastic. It's like a blue marble in the blackness of space. You see the turquoise waters in the tropics and the deep blue of the oceans. 70% of our planet is water. Actually, we should call it planet ocean instead of planet Earth. And this water brings us life. But besides the beauty, I could also see the other side. I saw deforestation, erosion, air pollution, and at night the thousands of lights of all the fishing ships. Sometimes we don't take good care of our planet. It's a planet, a spaceship Earth with limited resources. And we have to do something about the fact that we are not in balance with nature anymore. It's time to change and do things differently. With technology and common sense, we should find solutions for the challenges to restore spaceship Earth. I put my hope in young people, people who think differently. For them, a threat is not a threat, but it's a challenge. People like Boyan Slat of Ocean Cleanup. Therefore, I'm very happy that Boyan is able to announce today that his idea is widely embraced and that we can take a step further in one of the big challenges of this moment, cleaning up the oceans.
Hello to everyone. Great pleasure to be with all of you today, especially for this fantastic announcement. I'm sure, Boyan, when you started your project a few years ago, people told you that your idea, your vision was impossible. And thanks to your perseverance, I'm sure you are on the right track. And what's interesting to see in what you are doing is that you are using nature to solve the mess that we are doing on this planet. And from the Slat team, we like to wish you all the best. Good luck for your fantastic project. All the best to all of you. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Colonel Chris Hadfield, astronaut, commander of the International Space Station, an interested observer of our Earth. Onboard spaceships, I've had a chance to go around the planet more than 2,600 times, and you really get familiar with the complexity and the age and the beauty, the power, but also the fragility of our planet. We've recently started to discover water on other moons, a history of water on Mars, an incredible diversity of possibility that exists right across our solar system, but there are some serious things, of course, right here on Earth that spaceflight shows us. And one of those is that it's a finite place. And people like Boyan are doing work that are protecting that finite place. Everything we throw away has consequence. In order to keep 7.5 billion of us alive and prosperous and healthy, it takes work. And it takes initiative. And all of that space exploration didn't happen inevitably or by accident. It is the result of individuals taking action and doing something that is previously impossible and inherently magnificent. That's what Boyan's doing. That's what ocean cleanup is all about. And we absolutely need their work. Good luck, Boyan. Good luck to everybody there. And we're looking forward to seeing your particular results and the things that you can do together.
The Ocean Cleanup welcomes you to the next phase. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you Boyan Slat.
What if there were an even better way to clean the oceans? For the past 2 years, we've been working on something that will make that possible. What we're about to show you looks like nothing you've seen before, and I'm so glad we can finally share it with you here tonight. But before we get to the answer, let's go back and ask ourselves why it is so important that we succeed in ridding the oceans of plastic. So there are 5 areas in the world where ocean currents concentrate the plastic, and the largest one of these accumulations is the infamous Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is the one halfway between Hawaii and California. And here's a graph showing the concentration of plastic in that Great Pacific Garbage Patch, going from, say, the 1950s, 1960s on the left, all the way to very recently. And I think this is the one image that shows what it's all about. It's getting worse, fast. And that's actually not the only thing we can see from this graph. We also see that the plastic is accumulating. It stays there. And that is a very important observation, because that means that really the only way to make that line go down again is to actually go out there and clean it up. It simply will not go away by itself. It's persistent. And to illustrate this persistency, I brought along a few examples of the 1.5 million pieces that we took out of the ocean last year. So let's start with this one. So this may look like a random piece of plastic too, but it's actually the backside of a mini Game Boy. And if you look closely in it, you can see that it reads Nintendo 1995. So this one piece of plastic is basically as old as I am. And so here's a photo of me back in '95. I clearly do not look like this anymore. At least I hope it's clear. But after 2 decades, this piece of plastic remains relatively unchanged. Now, let's go back even further in time to 1989. You may remember it as the year that the Berlin Wall fell, but that actually wasn't the only thing that happened that year. No, it was also the year that somewhere in Japan, this hard hat was made. Now, and don't forget, this is stuff that we took out of the ocean last year, so it's pretty recent stuff. And, well, can it get even older? What we see here is a crate which presumably was used to hold soft drink bottles. And if you look at the date on it, you can see that it reads 1977. So this thing is 40 years old. 40 years. You know, 1977 was the year Elvis Presley left the building for good, presumably. And 1977 was also the year, for my fellow nerds, the year that Jobs and Woz presented the original Apple II at the West Coast Computer Fair. And then, when you look at these smaller species, the so-called microplastics, we estimate that these may have been large objects when they entered the ocean, say in the 50s or 60s. But due to sunlight, plastic becomes more brittle as the decades pass. And then it starts to break up into these small but very dangerous pieces. Dangerous because the contents of this dish are the actual stomach contents of a single sea turtle that was found dead in Uruguay last year. So not only does the plastic stay in the ocean, but it also becomes more harmful over time. And to be honest, this is what scares me most, because right now, according to our latest data from all these expeditions that we did, only about 3% of the plastic are these small pieces, but most of it is still locked up in these, floating around in these large objects still. Because, of course, what will happen over the next few decades, that all these large objects will start breaking down into these small and dangerous microplastics as well, increasing the amount of microplastics dozens of times, unless we clean it up. We must defuse this ticking time bomb. And that has been my mission ever since I founded the Ocean Cleanup 4 years ago. A lot has happened in those 4 years. It all began with one simple idea. Instead of going after the plastic, we let the plastic come to us, saving time, energy, and cost. By using the natural ocean currents to our advantage, we can let the ocean clean itself. I envisioned a network of extremely long floating screens which would first concentrate the plastic so that we could then extract it, store it, before we would then ship it to land for recycling. And since the idea was to use a closed screen instead of nets, we could avoid the bycatch of sea life. And we then showed that with a single 100-kilometer screen, we would be able to clean up about 42% of this Great Pacific Garbage Patch in just 10 years' time. But to turn this dream into reality, we first needed some funding. So we did this little crowdfunding campaign. Is anyone here who supported that? Well, but seriously, guys, if you hadn't had the guts to support us at such an early stage, the Ocean Cleanup simply wouldn't exist. And I'll be forever grateful for that. So thank you. Thank you very much. But how do you go about engineering something that is, this new and this uncertain? What we set out to do wasn't to simply improve upon an existing machine. No, we set out to develop an entirely new category of machine. And because there are so many unknowns, you cannot expect that the machine you designed to work exactly the way you wanted to the first time around. You have to do it iteratively. So what you do is that you test, you research, you test, you sometimes fail, and then you learn and you repeat until you make it work. And that's what we did. So first, we really had to understand the problem. So to do that, we organized a series of reconnaissance missions. Some of these were aimed at determining until what depth the ocean has to be cleaned, which turned out to be just a few meters. And then we had to find out how much plastic is out there to clean up. So we organized the largest ocean research expedition ever, crossing the Great Pacific Garbage Patch with 30 vessels at the same time to produce the first high-resolution map of the plastic pollution. And when crews observed that most of the plastic is actually really big stuff, we decided to cross the area again, but this time with an airplane. Using the world's most advanced sensors, we scanned the ocean surface for objects up to 10 meters in size, and this was actually the first time anyone conducted an aerial survey of an ocean garbage patch. And in parallel, we conducted hundreds and hundreds of scale model experiments, gradually improving the concept test by test. And this was then followed by our first ocean prototype, which we successfully deployed on the North Sea last year. And while conducting these tests, we of course faced hurdles. That's what iterative engineering is all about. It's why we do these tests in the first place. And it was the complexity of anchoring the system to the seabed, which was the biggest hurdle of them all. Solving this hurdle required a breakthrough. And it is this breakthrough that we are presenting to you today. Now, who would like to see what we came up with? Yes? All right. So at the ocean cleanup, our core principle has always been that we work with nature, that we use the natural ocean currents to our advantage. Already during my very first presentation back in 2012, I asked the audience, why go after the plastic if the plastic can come to you? But now, we're taking this idea one step further, saying, well, to catch the plastic, act like the plastic. Okay, let me explain. It will make sense in a few minutes. So, because we are completely reliant on the ocean currents, it's really important that we understand them in great detail, not just at the surface, but also underwater, from surface to seabed. So of course we've been modeling these ocean currents, and while we were doing this, we hit upon something which would have a profound impact on the design. Let's have a look at this graph here. What we see here is the relation between the speed of the current and the depth of the ocean. So what we see here is at the surface, the current is relatively quick. So we get a current speed of about 17, 18 centimeters per second. And then if we go only a few hundred meters deeper, we already get to, say, a speed of 3, 4 centimeters per second. So, a huge difference. So simply said, the water moves fast at the surface, moves slow the deeper you go. And then we were like, wait a minute. What if, instead of fixing the system to the seabed, we fix it here, in this deeper water layer? We imagined suspending a large object in this deeper water layer, effectively slowing down the system. Of course, we wouldn't be able to slow down the system 100% this way. It would start to drift. But that's entirely okay, because as long as the system moves slower than the plastic, as long as there is a difference in speed between the cleanup system and the plastic, we will collect plastic. Now just think for a moment about what that would mean. It would mean that we wouldn't need to go down to 4.5 kilometers of depth, which is, I can tell you, it's pretty deep, so we don't want to go there. Furthermore, it would mean that we wouldn't need to understand how the seabed composition is, so whether it's rock, whether it's clay, whether it's sand, it would no longer matter. And it would mean that the system isn't fixed in one direction, but free to rotate and orient itself exactly in the direction the plastic is coming from. So in other words, it wouldn't only be more cost-effective because that installation to put it there is easier, but it would also be more efficient. And who would like to see this in action? That's multiple people, that's good. So to demonstrate, so actually you're in luck because we're going to demonstrate that here right now. What you see here is a basin that we filled with water. And what we've done here is we've basically recreated the conditions as you would find them in the ocean. So we have fast current at the surface and a slow current at depth. And actually you can see that right here. We have this stick with the lines attached to it. You can see the lines are taut at the surface, so fast current here, slow current at depth. And now I would like to ask Bruno, one of our best scientists of the team, to, yes, Bruno, to deploy a scale model of one such cleanup system. So we see an anchor here, we see a barrier at the surface, anchor at depth, connected to each other, and you see it starts to drift. But then when we release some plastic, let's see what happens. So we see the cleanup system moves, but the plastic moves too, but moves faster than the cleanup system. So you see the plastic coming closer to the system, moving faster, hitting the barrier, moving towards the barrier, in the center of the barrier, hitting the barrier, moving towards the center, and you can see, you know, it's that it works. It's catching the plastic. Now, and interestingly, now that the cleanup system drifts, the survivability of the system has also greatly improved. Now, just think about what would happen if such a system would get hit by a storm, for example. Now, originally, when the system was still fixed to the seabed, it had to withstand all the force of the ocean pushing against it. But now that the cleanup system drifts, we only have to absorb a fraction of that force. Compare it to when you're outside and you kick a rock. Whether that rock flies away or is fixed in the ground, your toes will understand the difference. Now, and what's more, actually, the relationship between the speed of the water and the force it exerts on the system, you know, that's not a linear relationship. It's a quadratic one. And that is actually a very important notion, because that means that if we were to slow down the system just a bit, say by 1/5 of the original speed, the resulting force on the system will not be 1/5, but actually 1/25 of what it was before. And just to illustrate this, I brought along a few mooring lines, as I always do. So what we see here is a mooring line. Let's see if I can lift that. So it's actually pretty heavy. So this is actually the sort of the normal type of mooring line you would use to actually install a fixed cleanup system. So this is what would be required to withstand the force on a fixed system. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty chunky, quite a lot of plastic as well, so it's not very good. All right, didn't collapse, that's good. And now, thanks to this reduction in speed, we can actually now get away with just using this. So we're very confident that the system will be able to survive anything the ocean can throw at it. Now, and I think the elegance of this design is that we managed to make it even simpler. You know, it's so simple. It's just one barrier, one anchor, two lines connecting them, and a central passive collection point to buffer the plastic. That's it. And for me, from an engineering perspective, you know, it's just beautiful. And because the ocean currents aren't constantly coming from one direction, as mentioned before, we want the system to be able to move freely and rotate in the direction the plastic is coming from. And to make this possible, for this reason, we have now modified the ocean cleanup from being one massive system into a fleet of many smaller systems. And this is actually very important, because that means, not just because it will be more efficient, but it will also become easier to fund. Because even though the cleanup is now significantly less expensive, it's still likely to cost in the order of several $100 million. And you can imagine that raising that amount of capital in one go is pretty hard. So thanks to this modularity, instead of requiring the full funding upfront, we can now gradually scale up, system by system by system, which of course massively increases the financial viability, and this is how we'll rid the oceans of plastic. So you can imagine that when we discovered all this, we felt pretty good about ourselves. However, there is actually one more thing. Yeah. Because we talked about how the cleanup systems drift, but the question was, well, where do they drift towards? Well, to answer this question, we built this computer model, and what we see here are basically 50 white shapes, and each white shape represents one cleanup system, and then all these small blue dots, that's plastic. And then when we start to play this, you can see that indeed these cleanup system moves around, the plastic wiggles around as well, and what you'll notice is that areas start to form where there's more plastic. So these bluer areas and areas where there's less plastic. So these darker areas. And then if you look closely, what you may be able to spot is that what you see is that there, where there is a lot of plastic, you also see a lot of cleanup systems. And that is, of course, because the forces moving the plastic around are the same forces that move these cleanup systems around. So in other words, and so the waves, the winds and currents we're talking about, right? So in other words, there where the plastic goes, these cleanup systems automatically drift to as well. And in a way, it's like a plastic magnet. And because of this plastic magnet effect, it now turns out that the concentration of plastic in front of these cleanup systems is actually 5 to 10 times higher than what they would see if they would just be fixed in a single location, and that is what I meant when I said acting like the plastic. Now, and actually the funny thing is that it's all pretty counterintuitive, because what you would expect is that the more you slow down the system, the more plastic you would collect, right? But actually, the opposite is the case, because the less you slow down, the more you act like the plastic, the more these cleanup systems will gravitate towards those high density zones and therefore catch more plastic. Well, how much more plastic, I hear you thinking. We'll get to that. So what we see here is a map of how the Great Pacific Garbage Patch will look like in 2030 if we don't clean up. Now this is pretty bad, okay? We see that, in an area the size of California, we already get to concentrations that are, say, 3-4 times higher than what it is today. And then what would the garbage patch look like if our plan succeeds? Well, this is the result. Dramatic difference. And now it turns out that instead of being able to clean up 42% of the patch in 10 years' time, we can now actually clean up 50% of the patch in just 5 years' time. 5 years. Now, and remember this graph that I showed you at the beginning? Well, of course, we also calculated what's going to happen if our plan succeeds. And let's have a look at the results there. It's pretty incredible. So, well, And the thing is that 4 years ago, when I founded the Ocean Cleanup, everyone told me that there was no way to clean up what's already out there, and the only thing you could do is avoid making it worse. But to me, that was just such an uninspiring message. You know, don't we all want a future that is better than the present? And now we are able to show with data that we can actually make things better again. And we can do this, and we must do this, and we will do this. So, what's next? I think that was the topic of this event, so we may have to include that in this speech as well. Now, our promise was to start the cleanup of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch by the end of 2020. But unfortunately, we cannot keep this promise. Well, you can imagine that with such a dramatic change in design, this will also have some repercussions on the planning, right? So instead, we are here to announce that we will be launching our first actual cleanup system to be deployed in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, the one that will start the ocean cleanup within the next 12 months. Thank you. So as you know by now, at the Ocean Cleanup, we're pretty good at making computer renderings. But soon, all of this can actually become reality. And that reality is closer than you might think. At this very moment, the first parts of the system are already in production, including this one, the first element of the floating pipe of the barrier, which is being made in California right now. But I would say that it is even closer than you might think. Do you get it? Maybe even as close as behind this screen? So that's an anchor. Yeah, there's so much more I could share with you today, but I think I'll have to leave that for next time. So thank you, and have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
This concludes.